Hi, welcome to Tom Talk Shop. Today I'm going to make this kind of a piece of combination trim from several smaller profiles. This is going to present a number of problems to the woodworker, including finding a piece of wood that's good enough to do it, which is never available here. It's always poor quality woods. So I've got a piece of wood we're going to use to make this that I'm sure will be extremely challenging. And this is our local white poplar that we harvested right off the property. And our soil here is very, very poor, and so the trees don't grow very straight, and they're usually very hard. The book says this has a Janka hardness of about 540, and my experience is probably closer to 700 or 800. It's extremely hard. It's kind of like the bottom end of red maple hard, and it's very cranky to work with. So we'll get started with that, and we'll go from there. All right, I've got my first piece of wood here. This is actually going to be the last piece of wood on this job, and I saved it to make this video because I think it's going to be even more difficult than some of the others I've dealt with. The first thing I'm going to do is straighten up the back of it a little bit and try to get it where it'll sit on the sticking board a little bit flatter so that it'll butt up to it. Plus, when you do that, it'll make installing it a whole lot easier. This is going to be installed up against the ceiling, so it's not going to be getting installed to get something very flat anyway, but it's always good to start when you with something that is flat. There we go. As I'm looking at this piece has got a big bow. I think the camera will see that a little bit. But if not, and also you're going to see why this particular wood is high on my TEF factor here in a minute. I can already see it. But this is the back side, so I'm not going to worry about tear out too much. All right, I believe that's going to be, no, not even close. So I'm still real high here. And it's obviously got a bow on the front side too, because it's bouncing all over the place. But it is important to get these fairly straight to start with. Even though, like I said with this, we're going to be working up against the ceiling, it'll be heavily textured so that it's not going to be straight or square at all. And this stuff is narrow enough, it'll conform a little bit. Wow, that's still pretty bad. Okay, I got this thing straightened up as best as it needs to be. Now, I'm gonna secure the front end of the board here. I've already kind of figured out what I hope is the best angle for the grain. If it isn't, we'll find out here in a minute, but I want to get this secured first. And of course, this board has a bit of a Humpty Dumpty in it, as everything around here seems to. There we go. And I am going to have to secure it a little bit better. Got to bring out the big guns here. Now, Should hold, we'll see. Yeah, hopefully that won't make a monkey out of me. And yeah, that's holding. I won't need to put an extra screw in it. First thing I'm going to do is run my smoothing plane down the top of it. Mainly just to make sure that I don't have anything in here that's going to bite me and surprise me. This wood was prepared out in our other shop, and I haven't touched it with a hand tool yet, except for the two sides. And yeah, I can see some spots that are going to make my life really difficult already. All right. But that's what I said in the intro. I was going to use a piece of wood and not show you. Everybody else on YouTube, they show you with the most pristine piece of wood, and they make it look like it's just no effort whatsoever. Okay. Now that I've done that, I can kind of see and feel where my trouble spots are going to be. That's going to be a really bad one right there. So now I'm going to start marking out my work lines.
For clarity, I made this diagram of the lines Tom is marking.
This line is really just a waste line that I'm making just for hogging waste off. Do that. Now, everybody's planes will be slightly different profiles, and they'll want to do this a little bit differently. Also, my stock here is a little bit thicker. I'm typically work with 7/8 inch stock and not 3/4. If you're working with 3/4, you might want to use a slightly different size cove. We used to use a 5/8 cove, but we use a 7/8 now. I'm sorry, a 3/4 inch cove.
So that mark that you just made, is that a quarter or is that
3/8?
3/8. Okay.
It's just to use the rabbit plane to get the waste off. Now this is going to give me my outer boundary for making my bead here. This mark. We'll take a good picture of these when they're all marked, but this can give you some ideas how you can mix and match to make your own profiles. And here it is. And then this gives me my stop marks for my cove. And this is, for this particular case, it's 3/4 of an inch. This mark. Again, everybody's planes are going to have a little bit different profiles, so you have to kind of experiment with it. And I did with this when I first did it. I made a few pieces that ended up in the stove until I got it what I wanted. And somewhere around, I probably got an old piece, how we used to do this with 3/4. And I will take a picture of that and we can put it up on the screen. Okay, now I've got all my marks in here. Can we get a close-up of that? Okay, so my first thing I'm going to do, I've done this and I've drawn some pencil marks so we can see the little bit of the line here better. I'm going to take my snipes bill and I'm just going to open this line up just a little bit because it's really hard to get a center bead plane down that. Some ways of doing this profile, you can use a side edge bead plane, but you can't with this. So this is probably the trickiest part of the whole operation, other than dealing with persnickety wood. And I just go, in this case, I would be better off if I had the other half of the snipe bill pair, but I don't. This is one I've had for probably 40 years, and I don't even know where it came from, but I've had it that long. And I really only use it for this function. I don't use it for much else. Oh boy, and I can see a spot here that's really going to grief me when we get into this. Right there, just where I thought it was going to bother me. Okay, almost got this, and then as soon as I have this groove opened up enough, I'm going to grab my center bead plane. I'm using a 1/2 inch. I've actually got 2 of them, but I use one for starting it and one for finishing. It's easier, but if you only have one, you just do it that way. You run your plane in the groove very carefully, taking nice short little swipes and starting to get a second track going. This is the worst part of the whole thing right here. And if you slip off, you might have screwed your whole thing up. So you're going to be really careful of this. And of course, then you get something like that where the grain wants to go the other way. All right, so I just keep working my way down, just kind of making a track and digging a little bit deeper as I go. And you can see this grain is 6s and 7s all the way down. But if we use pristine wood for everything we did here, we would price ourselves right out of business. So that's not how it works. Just keep picking away at it. Okay, I've got my track done here. And then once I've done that, it's just a matter of starting to make my bead very carefully. Like I said, this is some really cranky wood. It's not going to look smooth as certain other channels make it look, but in reality, in the shop, that's the way it gets done. I actually sharpened these planes before I started this job, and they're actually dull again already. This wood seems to pick a lot of silica or some other mineral up from the soil. So I just make my way along, carefully getting as much as I can. And a lot of times it won't quite round it off. Sometimes it can be done by changing the direction of the bead, but not always, in which case I have the other plane set up for that. I prefer using this one because they're not a perfect match. But I go down first and get everything I can get done. It works best if you take short, fast stabs at it rather than try to take long sweeps. It looks really interesting and fun to make the long sweeps, but unless it's a piece of soft, clear eastern white pine, that doesn't usually work real well. And this has got a bunch of grain that can't decide which way it wants to go. Doesn't act like it wants to go either way, because I tried it going the opposite direction when I cut the track for it. All right, now I've not quite got enough there. My first trick is going to be to put the plane in here and go the other direction, which is not going to, it's really going to bite, I think. So, get this guy. There we have a nice clean bead for everything I've done. And got some awful tear out in a couple spots, but this is ceiling trim. It doesn't have to be beautiful. This is the highest risk cut of the whole operation, which is why I do it first. In case something really bad goes wrong, I just discard the piece and keep going, get a new one out. I hate to have made the cove and then find out I made a mess out of it, like I almost did right there. There we go. Now, whew. And there we have it. We have one nice clean bead. Okay, to start with, I'm going to make just a real rough 3/8 inch rabbit. And the way I'm doing it, you don't have to do it this way. Do it with whatever you have. I've got my rabbit plane set for 3/8, and I just kind of make a shelf. Just makes it go faster. And then I use my wood plane to get most of the waste off because it's quite a bit more efficient. This plane makes it work a little bit harder because, one, the fence, and for whatever reason, it doesn't remove the waste quite as efficiently. And kind of as I stated at the beginning of the video, this wood is very hard for the species that it is. It's right up there with some of the maple we have around here. It definitely doesn't cut like basswood or tulip wood. And you can see there's another flaw right here, but we're going to be cutting it off anyway. It was just a little bit of wane on the one corner. For our purposes, that actually gives us a good indication of the direction the grain's going. And now that's gone out of my way. So I'll take my wood plane, start taking the big chunks of waste off. And what I do is I'm just going to work my way down just like you would any normal rabbit. If I encounter a small knot or something, I'll clear it with a chisel so I don't have a big blowout. And I usually, when I'm doing a cove, go past my waistline just a hair. But I don't want to go past it much. So just usually cut it till it disappears. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to remove it anyway. You make 100 feet of this in one day, and you'll know you've done something. You also know you can get rid of your gym membership. Okay, so I've got a little bit cleared off. Okay, I've got my rabbit cleaned out here. If you tried to do it all with your round over, you'd be here till Christmas. So now I'll start by removing the top waste first. At least for me, it's the easier one to do because you have that flat surface there to ride up against. You don't have to worry about being too accurate at this point. You're just taking the waste off. You might even could make the rabbit a little bit bigger, but I'm getting pretty close to where I'd like to have it. Otherwise, you sometimes end up with a divot in the middle of your cove and you ruin your trim. Or you have to cut it deeper and it doesn't match anything. So I cut down to start with just till my line just still shows a little bit. Not been real particular at this point. Ooh. Yeah, that's going to grief me a little bit right there. Now, I'll go a little bit further here for the purposes of this. That's probably far enough. Now, once you've got your top profile roughed in, then you start back here. I start at the front. You can go back to front, front to back. Doesn't make any difference, and sometimes I do it that way. It actually depends on the piece of wood and alignment of the stars, moon, and whatever else tempers me that day. Now I just start working back a little bit and taking off the bottom part of the profile, getting real close to the line again. Just trying to get off as much waste as I can without getting over my line if I can help it. Want to make sure you eat your Wheaties the day you do this. Oh, wait a minute. We don't do Wheaties anymore. Eat something. It'll give you some energy. Let's see. All right, so now I'm almost there with my rough in. So I have a rough in, and now it's pretty rough. It doesn't really look like much of a cove yet. But then this is the part where then I have to clean it up. Okay. I have a spot here that I ran into some difficulty, so I'm going to show this best I can. The grain here is just literally 6s and 7s. So I'm going to do the bulk of the waste with the gouge. And then I will come back with a plane and vary with the lightest touch I can possibly give it. I will get it, smooth it off, and hopefully I'm going to have the minimal amount of tear out. There'll be some, and hopefully it's just a little bit, and I can fix it with my genuine imitation shark skin at the end of this. Ooh, boy, that's naughty. But we're going to go ahead and show this because we are a reality show here. Okay, I think I'm getting a little closer. Let me chip a little bit more out of that. Oh, goodness. Yep. Yeah, the purpose I'm doing this is so if I'm getting a little tear out, but I'm trying to keep my tear out as shallow as I possibly can so I can either scrape it or use an abrasive at the end of this to clean it up. And that's probably going to get me real close, top to bottom. Yeah, this is to give you hope that you can actually do this with wood you get from Home Depot, which you can. And we have done it when we didn't have our own wood handy. Now, hopefully, I got enough off. I'm not going to have too much tear out here. I'm still removing and roughing in the waste. Ooh. I think my plane's getting a little dull too. There we go. Yeah, that's better. All around a little better. There we go. It's all roughed in, and now I've just got to finish the profile. So what I just do is, plus now I kind of know where the wood is rotten, like right there. Get that real close. Oh my goodness, that's really rotten right there. And my case, my eyes aren't the best. I just use my fingertips to kind of decide when I'm really close. Back that off now that I had to still grabbing a little bit. There we go. That's more like we need to be. And I just kind of work my way down, feeling for the high spots and where it's kind of out around. And right here, the grain changes direction about 3 times. So I'll go to there. And hopefully it'll let me go past that. Nope. It's going to grieve me. Now I'm going to go ahead and go all the way down. Just quickly cleaning and finishing it up. That's still a little bit bitey. when I'm doing this, I leave a little bit of my mark usually for this particular profile, and you'll see in a minute why. I don't do it when I'm making the small version, but I like to have a little bit more meat to work with when I round it over. There we go. And this isn't a science, it's just kind of got to get it as close as you can. And now I'm on my really rotten spot. Oh. And I want to try to plane it going forward if I can without it tearing out. We'll see. So far, so good. But my luck will run out here, I'm sure, in a second. So far, so good. The trick to it not tearing out is taking very careful little passes. So I actually got that with just only a tiny bit of grip in it. That'll actually polish out pretty easy. And I just make my way down kind of quickly. This is a kind of a touch thing. You just got to kind of feel it. It's important not to have your plane set too deep like I did earlier there in the thing. Keep tapping it back until it doesn't bite too much. If you were making a lot of this particular profile, it'd be handy to have two of these, which I do not have. Let's see. And right down almost to the end. And I've got more grain that wants to tear out. Usually the end, particularly the end feed or the back of the trim, usually about an inch of that you need to consider as snipe. So you always make 4 to 6 inches longer than you need for a particular piece. This is an excess piece in case of this job. It's in case I screw up, which I'm sure I will when we're installing this. So this is so bad I'm going to go the other direction with it. This is why I don't like compound trim planes, because they don't allow you to change directions. And if anybody of you have ever seen them up close, most of them have a hole drilled in them right here. And that's so you can put a piece of rope through them so you get some young sucker to help you pull it. Okay, now I've got this done, and it's basically done. I'm going to have to do a little bit of cleanup, but I round over this surface, and then I round over the I don't know what you call this surface of the cove. It just finishes it out nicely, and it gives it a very hand-done appearance, because machine cut trim just doesn't really look that way. Gives it a little bit more dimensionality than machine cut trim will give you.
Well, a lot of our work entails doing trim in older machines, so we want it to look hand cut.
Yeah, in the case of this, we're not exactly matching an existing trim, but we want it to look like something that was period of the building we're working on. So this is kind of pretty close to something that we've seen around these parts. Since there are a lot of houses here that were built in the 18th century. I've never seen any here that were any older than that. There might be some built in the 17th, but probably not.
Well, we did prototype this entranceway, and we did take photos of that, so we can show a little bit of that in the video if you'd like.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. There we go. Now, the last big bit of trim work I got to do is to clean the underside of this cove. And I just take a small, this is a number 4, but a number 2 or a number 4 round over. If you're making a smaller cove like a 3/4 or 5/8, you'll need about a number 2. This is bigger, so a number 4 works a little better. And I just go along here and I just remove my marking line off so that it just kind of disappears, which is why I left it when I was making the cove. And it gives you just a really nice finished edge on that. It's one of those things that takes an extra couple of minutes, and it really adds a lot to your work. And again, this is why I like to just do this with individual planes, because this allows me to change directions. Big compound planes maybe are a little faster, but you have to have such a pristine piece of wood, and it really needs to be pretty soft, really, to do it. I know they used harder woods, but the quality of wood that was available to them was generally a little bit better than what we have. Though some of the houses we've worked on, some of the wood we've seen, including the trim wood, not as good as you would think. I have a feeling that the good wood here was sent to Britain, and the crappier woods were used here locally, and probably the trim was probably produced on site or by somebody in town and then shipped out to whatever house was being built. This piece would have certainly not been suitable for a compound plane at all. All right, I've almost got this done. And the grain changes right in the middle. I love that. Nope, it was right the first time. Now I got a scar there. And it looks pretty good all the way down. This will make you a hunchback if you do this all the time. Now I'm going to use my piece of genuine imitation shark skin and just make a fold here. I say shark skin because it's about the same roughness as a piece of dry shark skin, which is what was used before emery paper became widely available. No, if I had my druthers, I'd rather use shark skin, but we don't live near the water, and I don't have friends that fish deep water, so I don't have access to it anymore. And I just use it to clean out the furry parts of the groove mainly, and there's a little bit of a thing. I leave this part to last because it does leave little drop deposits of aluminosilicate or whatever you got in your wood, and I don't want my tools coming in contact with it. So I never use any kind of abrasive till I'm done with edge tools on piece. The only edge tools that'll be in contact with this going forward are the ones that are used to cut it and miter it. And even with all the tear out, nothing in here you're going to see from more than a foot or two away. If you want to look at it that close, well, you can go buy your furniture at Ashley, I suppose. So there's that. And then a couple of the deep tears that I had here where I made a mistake. I'll just get them with my French curve here. Find one that'll match the profile. This usually answers for the worst of it. Then you can just take the genuine imitation shark skin to it too. And I do right along the edge here where it's kind of got some fuzzies. I don't generally sand the whole thing, only just a little area. And then basically, except for burnishing, it's all done. And then I burnish it in a traditional manner. All right. Okay, the piece is all done and it's ready to break off the thing, except for I got one little spot here I want to get with my emery paper again. Yeah, right there. When I burnished it, it brought some fuzzies back up. All right, pretty good looking piece for something that's going to be paint graded anyway. So all I have to do now is just break it off the stickering board. And it's ready to get sheaved up with the rest of it and installed. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions.